Welcome back to Holy Land Uncovered. I'm Tal Heinrich, and our next discussion is one that can only take place in the Holy Land. Have you ever heard about initiatives to build the third temple in Jerusalem? Well, even if you might have heard, such an initiative still might really surprise you. How about Turkish Muslims promoting the Third Temple project along with Jewish Orthodox rabbis? Meet the doctors Oktar Babuna and Cihat Gündoğdu. They came here from Turkey. Thank you so much and welcome to Israel. And Yehuda Glick, Likud member of Knesset, will also join us shortly. Oh, here he is. Thank you so much, Yehuda, for being with us as well. So the Temple Mount is one of the biggest flashpoint sites in the region. It often ignites very violent, clashes. And your message here is holy sites, I'm reading it, should be centers of reconciliation and not conflict. Can you tell us a bit about the idea that you're willing to promote that might help achieving it?
Well, I say shalom to the great and noble Israeli nation, and Mr. Adnan Oktar's greetings, deep love and respects, and shalom to noble Israeli nation, children of Israel, actually. Beautiful people are living in this country. It's a unique place. It is sacred both for Jews, for Muslims, and for Christians, and that makes it prone to many center of conflicts and violences, but this is no benefit for anybody. It's a prayer house where God's name will be mentioned, and it has to be revealed for people, all the nations to pray there, as stated in the Ishaya. All nations, God says, will be praying there together, shoulder to shoulder, to serve God. These are statements from the Torah.
Yehuda Glick, you're joining us. He will be with us in just a sec. Here, Yehuda, so you met with the two doctors sitting with me here in the studio. Were you surprised by this initiative?
Yes, I have. I'm actually in a very long-term connection with Dr. Oktar and Dr. Babuna, and I think that they're doing wonderful activity. They're led by a very special leader from Turkey, Adnan Oktar. And I think that which shouldn't surprise us, because people who believe in God know that God is inclusive and not exclusive, and he wants us all to join together and turn the Temple Mount into a house of prayer for all nations. And I think that I am sure that we're in the beginning of a biblical era where more and more religious leaders from around the world will join this wonderful initiative of turning the Temple Mount to a place where it should be a world center for peace and calling in the name of the one and only God.
From a Jewish Orthodox perspective, doesn't it clash with Jewish, claims on the Temple Mount? I'm just curious. Yehuda Glick is not with us any longer. So, you mentioned you're both representative of Turkish Muslim intellectual and spiritual leader Adnan Oktar. He wrote this book, along with many others, Islam Denounces Terrorism. So I know that he advocates what he calls Muslim creationism. Can you explain what is it exactly?
Muslim creationism is the type of how things are created on Earth. All the species, they appear abruptly when we look at the history of life on Earth through fossil evidence and as well as the biochemistry evidence about that. The proteins cannot form by themselves. Other proteins are necessary. The DNA and the others, all they need is a complete cell. Unless there is not a complete cell with all its organelles and all its functioning parts, there is no functioning cell at all. There will be no life at all. So it needs an abrupt existence at all. A complete system, if it appears all of a sudden, then that means there's a miraculous creation in that.
You know what's interesting? We're used to seeing religion as a problem and not as a solution. And here you are speaking about the Third Temple as a holy site to three religions.
Well, there is a real religion which is from the Quran. God says Quran is sufficient, and God tells us to live in peace with love and mercy against all other people. There is no oppression, there is no compulsion in religion. And there is a false religion, actually, which is superstitions, traditions, and fabricated hadiths. Hadiths are sayings of the Prophet, and they were generated 200 years after he passed away. So being against modernity, being against arts, science, and aesthetics, and oppression of the woman, or hatred against Jews, which is called, of course,
This is not Islam.
Anti-Semitism. This is not Islam. It is unlawful according to Islam.
And what we're seeing here is images of the future temple, third temple mount. That is very interesting, but I have to ask, is it doable? Is it not a fantasy? Because, with so many regulations, objections, and funding, of course.
With love and discussion, it is very, very doable. Actually, it's a promise of the God. As we have read the statements from the Torah, we will pray there all together. It's a prayer house of God. There is nothing can stop that. We are living in very specific times, and with this pure gold carvings and with original form, it will be revealed as a prayer house for all the nations, shoulder to shoulder. It's doable because we can discuss that. First of all, we should know it's not going to damage either Dome of the Rock or Masjid al-Aqsa. There's enough land, and this will be a prayer house for Jews, Christians, and the Muslims.
It's interesting because you said now nothing can stop it. And in 2016, UNESCO, the World Heritage body, approved a controversial resolution that actually ignores Jewish and Christian ties to the Temple Mount. Basically, what they said is that the site is defined only as a Muslim holy site of worship. And you are two Muslims sitting here with us, and you don't feel comfortable with this resolution.
Well, of course it's wrong. I mean, there are thousands of documents.
First of all, King Solomon is a prophet for Muslims, and we love him very much. In the history of Islam, King Solomon was very much praised in the Quran because of his beauty, aesthetics, understanding of aesthetics and beauty. He is very much praised in the Quran. And nobody should be concerned about the rebuilding of the temple. Again, everybody will be happy about that, and we will accept this with joy and enthusiasm. The whole Islamic world will accept this as a fact.
Yeah, the documents are from the Torah, actually. It's stated that the connection of the Jews from the Temple Mount, and there are Ottoman Empire's documents and the historical documents, thousands of the different documents document. Of course, they have a tie there. That is wrong and has to be removed. And UNESCO has changed. The goal of the UNESCO is peace, actually. But this only generates conflict, and it is wrong.
Speaking of wrong, maybe some say that Jerusalem is not a holy city in the Quran, and therefore Muslim claims over Jerusalem are basically political. What would you say to that?
But
briefly?
There are 4 verses. God says, I settled the children of Israel in the Holy Land and in the town. And this town is Jerusalem. And God says, they will be there until the hereafter. Nobody can take this away from the Israelis. Alongside Muslims and the Christians, we will live in peace together.
Oktar, amen to that.
And look what we're doing today and how amazing that is. There's only shadows ahead, barely clearing the room. Get to know the feeling of liberation and relief. It's over. Hey now.
The so-called new normal keeps changing.
Moscow is clearing up after what's being called the worst storm here in 100 years.
The hurricane, reaching up to 80 kilometres per hour, was the deadliest.
In the storm that brought high winds, hail and heavy rain, the BBC noted reports of winds up to 70 miles per hour.
With long, cold winters, Moscow is used to harsh weather, but it's not used to this.
We follow 2 young journalists to Somalia, where terrorism, armed conflict, drought, and famine threaten everyday life.
Watson had taken these images of Somalia in the 1980s, which show a country lush with life.
In my 45 years, I've never seen this kind of a drought that has killed our animals. It's the worst one.
Sending floodwater cascading through towns and villages in southwestern Sri Lanka.
And Cyclone Mora showed it no mercy when it hit southeast Bangladesh.
We are used to rains and flooding in our area, but this year it has been unusual. We have never experienced such floods in 70 years.
That and destruction on a scale not seen.
In a cruel twist, the land which just weeks ago was cracking with drought is now dangerously unstable.
Oh my God! Woo!
A ferocious storm in South Africa has left at least 8 people dead.
12-metre waves pummeled the coast, flipping cars.
More were slammed by smashing waves during the city's worst storm in 3 decades.
Cape Town has lately been suffering one of the most severe droughts in years. Meanwhile, in Knysna, authorities are struggling to control another natural disaster, a wildfire.
And as the city of Cape Town deals with the aftermath of Wednesday's freak storm, firefighters in the town of Knysna, about 500 kilometers away, are battling a deadly inferno.
Absolute scenes of devastation, and many are so shell-shocked here.
But it's a modern reality of the El Niño world we live in, where weather patterns are extreme, and I'm afraid Cape Town has taken a pummeling these last 24 hours.
So this is act of God territory. This is not something that you can do much about, you just have to roll with it.
The thing that's also we should realize, the number of natural disasters that we've had and natural challenges that the world's faced has actually increased at a significantly higher rate. There has been a change.
Waiting for a war to end while disease takes hold. It's not just Yemen's civil war that's taking lives.
A cholera outbreak ravaging Yemen, and it's spreading in an unprecedented manner, says the World Health Organization.
The number of infections has soared.
In the last 2 days, more than 13,700 cases have been registered in 19 counties. It's a very large and alarming number.
It's one of the world's most fatal and rare diseases. Its last outbreak in West Africa killed more than 11,000 people. Now, Ebola appears to be back, but this time heading east to the Democratic Republic of Congo.
With that, I just want to start by saying that we are experiencing a non-stop onslaught of viral diseases emerging from nature. Just to recap some of the highlights from the last 6 years, I'll remind you that in 2012, you started hearing about MERS on NPR. And then in 2014, it was Ebola. In 2015, it was Zika. 16, we now have, if you don't know, a very scary bird flu circulating in China. And you wouldn't know this because our press apparently doesn't talk about anything but Donald Trump anymore. But there's actually a huge yellow fever virus outbreak going on in Brazil, to the extent that 19 million doses of vaccine have just been mobilized in that country.
Brazil is facing its worst yellow fever outbreak in 40 years. There are nearly 600 confirmed cases in humans, a 1,400% increase from last year.
So there is a lot going on.
Lyme disease is already on the rise nationwide.
We've seen the number of cases triple in the United States.
Tick-borne illnesses are on the rise across the country, not just in a specific region.
In a year expected to be one of the worst yet for Lyme disease.
But experts say there is another disease to watch out for this year.
The CDC says a parasite is infiltrating pools in the valley at an alarming rate.
Crypto cases linked to pools and water playgrounds increased twofold.
Nationally, sexually transmitted diseases are on the rise.
Bell County is continuing to see some of the highest STD rates in the state.
There's been a 40% increase in syphilis in the last year, and that's just in Virginia.
And Mississippi is not an exception. The number of cases have more than doubled in 3 years.
And while chlamydia and gonorrhea are treatable, they are evolving.
to the 1930s with what we used then. There's been a steady resistance that has developed in that particular organism.
Meaning the medication is slowly losing its ability to cure the disease.
So that's really concerning because as it stands right now, that's kind of our last option for treatment of that particular infection.
We're not talking about a slight increase. There's a horrifying surge in drug overdoses in the United States of America.
And they continue to climb every year.
It's the greatest public health crisis of our generation.
Now, listen to this. Overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50.
Public health authorities in central and southern Georgia have never seen anything like it. Dozens of drug overdoses in just 48 hours.
Just a week before the one-year anniversary of the Pulse nightclub attack, yet another terrifying scene unfolding inside of an Orlando business.
Today's violence part of a growing problem. The most recent statistics show workplace shootings rose by 15% in 2015.
As a single incident, the London Bridge attack has sent a shockwave through a normally resilient city. What makes it worse is the growing concern that things like this keep happening, and nobody can stop them.
A court in Taiwan has ruled in favor of gay marriage, a landmark decision paving the way for the island to become the first place in Asia to legalize same-sex unions.
The judges ruled on a constitutional challenge to current laws, which say that marriage is between a man and a woman.
It's not just against the Chinese culture, it's against all the cultures. I mean, once the definition of marriage is changed, I will be affected too. My child is going to live in a whole lot different environment.
Widespread disruption on the island, people trapped in mountainous areas. Heavy rain, which began on Friday, continues to inundate Taiwan.
Cars have flipped over in roaring gale force winds.
And we haven't even had time to talk about Luke 21:25. Words of Jesus. The sea and the waves roaring, not like you've seen before, is what he's saying.
Flammas eius, Lucifer matutinus inveniat. Ille inquam Lucifer, qui nescit occasum, Christus filius tuus, qui regressus ab inferis, humano generis serenus iluxit, et tecum vivit et regnat in saecula saeculorum.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
I believe in the Pope because he believes in peace, and my definition of peace is accepting all religion.
Accepting all religion.
So it was really amazing because now I'm 31 years old and I never thought about becoming Catholic, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen, of course, but already the thought of it.
But this is a pope that struck such a huge chord among so many people in such a short time. But many do now expect him to get down to business and start tackling the very sensitive issues of reform and cleanup of the church. They hope that his humility and simplicity